Okay, the job for this afternoon is to put a 12-volt power port in my GMC Sierra. So I've got a low tire on my truck, and I got out my cobalt tire inflator to air up the tire. So this tire inflator has a 12-volt plug like that, and what I discovered is my truck does not have a port for this. Newer vehicles don't have this type of 12-volt power port anymore. They have a USB port, but it won't supply enough amperage to run a unit like this. Now my cobalt inflator, which I did a video on this a couple of years ago, this inflator has been great. It has a 120 volt plug, and my truck has a 120 volt outlet. But the wire for the plug here is only about 2 feet long. The air hose on my tire inflator is only about 2.5 feet long. So if I plugged up the tire inflator right here, it wouldn't reach any of my tires. And I could plug it up with an extension cord, but I don't always have an extension cord with me, and I shouldn't have to do that. This plug right here is on a 20-foot cord, so if I find a way to plug this up in the truck, it has enough distance in the cord to reach all over the truck. All right, so I went to AutoZone, I was looking around, and I found that you can buy a 12-volt power outlet right here. So what I'm going to do is find a way to permanently mount that 12-volt power outlet here underneath my hood. And I was going to mount it inside the truck, but the area underneath the dash is so tight and so well enclosed, there's really no convenient place to put the power outlet. So I got a fuse assembly here, which I'm going to connect up to it. I'm going to put a 10 amp fuse. So the cobalt tire inflator only takes 1.5 amps of power. I'm going to go ahead and put a 10 amp fuse, so if I have to use a different type of tool with it, I've got enough power capability to do that. So I'm going to find somewhere to mount this, tie it into the fuse, and hook it into power or ground and power underneath the hood, so it's permanently mounted if I ever need to use it. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I've got this bracket I found left over from another project, so I'm going to mount the power plug on the side of the bracket just like that. I'm going to run the wires down in between the fuse box and the battery, and I'll mount the bracket and the plug on this lip that sticks up right here off this piece of metal, and I guess that's part of the frame assembly that encloses the engine under the hood. So I'll mount the whole thing right here just like that, and that way this will be in a nice convenient position. It'll be out of the way, the hood will still close, and I'll hook the negative terminal up to the frame or to some bolt that's a good grounding point, and I'll run the positive through a fuse and hook it directly up to the battery. So you might be thinking, doing something like this, would this void my warranty? And the answer is no. People put accessories in their vehicles a lot. They put in new radios, amplifiers, extra lights, all sorts of stuff. That will not void the warranty, so I'm not really worried about that. And what I'm doing is really simple, and if I ever had to, I could take it out in 5 minutes. All right, so let's get this mounted and get started. Okay, so the 12-volt power outlet is connected up to the fuse, and I put shrink wrap insulation on there, put a ring on this end so I can hook it up to the battery. I extended the power or the ground cable about 1 foot, put a shrink wrap insulation on there, put a ring on there, and I know my rings are the wrong color. I used what I had on hand. So now I'm going to mount the 12-volt power outlet on the bracket. So I've marked where the holes go. I'm just going to double check that. Then I'm going to drill holes in the bracket. So let's line it up. Looks like my hole spots are correct. And then I'm going to go and put this in the truck and mark where I want my hole to go. I think I'm just going to reuse this hole and probably make another hole by it. And so I'm going to drill these holes and then go mount it on the truck. Okay, the holes are drilled in the mounting bracket, so I'm going to go ahead and put the 12-volt socket on there. I've got a couple of screws with washers on them, so I'll put one there. On the socket side, I'm going to put a lock washer and a nut on the other side and tighten that down sort of loosely. All right, then put another nut with a washer on the other side, lock washer and a nut, tighten that down. I think I'm only going to put 2 nuts in this. I drilled holes for all 4 screws. I think I'm only going to put 2 screws in this. anyhow, that's how it looks. So it's tightened down pretty good. It's not going to go anywhere. So now I'm going to go and mount it in the truck. Okay, so I'm going to temporarily mount this in here. You can see where I drilled the hole. I almost messed up and drilled it in the wrong spot. I caught myself at the last minute. So if you do something like this, you know, measure 4 times, cut once, that whole thing. All right, so let's put the screw through there. Put the bracket on. Put the nut on. I just want to see if everything fits okay. It's a little bit tight. I'm going to have to bend the bracket a little bit because it butts right up against the top of the fuse holder assembly. So what I wanted to do is put this on and make sure that I had measured my wire properly. This ground wire is actually going to come around the back side and go around to the battery, to the negative on the battery. The positive is going to come up underneath here, connect onto the battery too on the positive side. So it looks good. So I need to bend this a little bit, then lock it down. Okay, I got the bracket bent. I made sure everything lines up right. So let me just run the wires where they're supposed to go. So the electrical, the positive wire goes that way. The electrical wire is going to come around behind the battery. So I'm going to sort of push it back there. I was actually going to put insulation on this, but I'm not going to be able to because the wires have to go in completely different directions. So that all looks good. Let's put the screw on. Screw the bracket down. And if you do something like this, just take your time, don't get in a rush. So I made sure that I could actually pull the top off the fuse cover assembly. So let me show you that. So it'll come right off, no problem. Put it back on. All right, tighten this down. The next thing to do is to put the wires on the battery. All right, so let's do that. Okay, now I'm going to put the negative side on. So I got the wire snaked up underneath here. This is a 10mm bolt. Be careful when you're messing around with electrical tools on your battery. You definitely don't want to short your positive and negative. That would not be good. And don't lose your bolt there either. I've done that before. Alright, that's on. The wire's out of the way where it couldn't possibly hurt anything, I hope. Alright, lock that down, tighten it. All right, that's the negative, it's on good. Okay, so I need this wire to hook up to this screw. So I can take the nut off, put this on, hook it back up, and I won't hurt anything. So the wire is not long enough to run all the way out the end of the battery compartment. I didn't think about that, so what I'm gonna do is just make a small incision on the side and run the wire through. And that won't hurt the integrity of this compartment. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take my knife and actually I'll do it back here. Okay, I cut a small groove right here in the compartment that's around the positive side of the battery. So I'm going to put my wire through here. I'm just going to slip it down over the top of that screw right now. Push it down. What I want to do is make sure that my cover will go on here with no problem. So the wire is in there. Put the top on, make sure it's lined up right. Pops right in place, no problem. So it's secure. Yep, it's secure, so this wire is sealed pretty good over here. All right, so let's pull that off. Now I'm going to take a 13 millimeter socket and take this nut off right here. Be careful if you do something like this. If you're using a metal ratchet, don't brush up against anything. If you're on the positive side of the battery, don't brush up against anything that's on the frame. Don't hit the frame or any of the frame assembly or connecting pieces or anything. And if you're doing something on the negative side, then just make sure you don't brush up against the positive side of the battery. Pull that off, put my wire on. Now before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put a fuse in. Right now there's no fuse in here. So the fuse goes on the wire part right down in there. So what I'm going to do is put a 2 amp fuse in there. All right, so let's do that first. Okay, I got my 12 volt power outlet installed. It's nice and secure. I've got my ground and positive wires in. I've got a 5 amp fuse in my fuse block. And a note about fuses: don't put a fuse in here that's too big, because if you do and you pull too much power, you could run down your battery. Also, make sure you use the right type of fuse. I've seen people who got tired of changing fuses, and what they did is they just took a piece of metal and they bridged their fuse contacts. Don't do that, because what's going to happen is you're going to end up shorting your battery out, and it's going to damage your battery or your electrical system or leave you stranded. All right, I got my Cobalt tire inflator right here, so I'm going to plug it up, and if it works, you should see the lights on the inflator come on. So let's plug it in and check it out. All right, we're in business. All right, so now I'm going to take the tire inflator and air up the front tire. Okay, let's try it out. So I've got the tire inflator plugged up. I'm going to put a few pounds of air in this tire, so take the cap off. And the tire inflator should tell me how much air is in there so I don't overinflate it. All right, so it says I've got 33. The dash says I've got 32. What I'm going to do, just to demonstrate it, I'm going to go ahead and put 2 pounds of air in it. Okay, that's it. So it works. So I got 35 pounds of air in. I'll go ahead and check the rest of my tires, but anyhow, this is pretty simple to do. This way, if I need to use an accessory, I've got a plug here to use. And so I want to make a point about this plug. When I first hooked it up, according to the package, the white wire was power and the tan or darker wire was ground. That's actually backwards. The package was wrong. I had to rewire it. The white is actually ground and the darker wire is positive. So if you do something like this and you buy one of these cheap things that's made overseas, just don't just go by what the package says. Check it out for yourself. So anyhow, thanks for watching.